Let's see. Experiencing the light within you is experiencing the source from within you, or the source that is you. It sort of means that the same light, the same living light, that is what love is and living spirit, that we experience, which is ourselves. When we experience ourselves in a bidirectional mirror, the beauty that is in the eye of the beholder, that beholder, which is ourselves, is in fact the light from which the source is that we experience what we are, what source is within us, that we experience in the mirror. We are a reflection of what source is, and the purity of that light, and the purity of that spirit, and the purity of the love that we share with others. It is the purity of that light that we experience within us that becomes a projection of what source is. I thought about this because there's a guy that I listen to from time to time. His name is Alan Watts. And sometimes this was one of the beauties that I love about being with Hawaiian Kanaka Maholis, who reminded me so many times about how we love our labels, we love our words, we love to put things in nice little boxes, to give descriptive terms and how we do all this. So I'm thinking of Alan Watts and how he describes about the Zen, the gurus, the Buddhists, and all this, and all these different names that we have for all these different philosophical, how do I put it, perceptions, that different names that we assign labels and terms to, right, that for me simply become a distraction. Okay, because I could spend months, if not years, studying Zen. I could spend months, if not years, studying Buddhism, all the different religions, okay? When all you got to do is look within yourself and ask yourself what you are. And then you'll know. If you know that you are what love is in living light, and you are what love is in living light, then that means that we know how to share that energy wherever we go in the entire cosmos. Because it starts with light, which is what love is. So how do we know that? Because we are that. So when you start with that, because you've always been that, it means that you already know that you're an eternal living spirit living in that light and sharing that light with everyone, because you're never going to run out of what that is. Now you can take a nature hike with a 7-year-old child through nature, particularly in Hawaii and particularly on the Big Island. Excuse me, not the Big Island. Well, the Big Island will do because of the active volcano that's there, but particularly on the island of Kauai because it's the flower island. Okay, when they see how life unfolds with love. Love is presenting itself to us. That love that's presenting itself to us is the great living spirit in Mother Earth. The same love that a mother has for the purity and the innocence of her child. It's actually quite simple. Love is what love does. And what does love do? Cares about you, has compassion for you, has empathy for you. Because when you're hurt, we experience the pain and suffering that you have. And we don't like to experience that because now we're experiencing a loss of everything we give love to, which is a loss we feel in us. And that's, for me, basic logic. But it's not up to me to decide for others how they choose to experience who they are. That's their free will to do that. So what that means is, since we recognize we have our free will, which is the free spirit. That's why I know, because my energy in the mirror does this, okay? Which is seeking the path of least electrical resistance. Why? We don't like the walls being put up where our energy is being prevented from being able to push the light wherever we need to go, because we know where we're going, that light needs to come in there in order to do what? Raise the light and heal those who have suffered pain and suffering. Because once that light goes up where they are, now their light their energies and back in alignment with our energies. Now we're all back in alignment with the great living spirit of Mother Earth. We've restored the beauty and the love and the perception through which we perceive the cosmos that we live in, which is free to experience who you are, which is your free spirit. And for me, children are the greatest example of that. And that's one of the reasons, as you can imagine, on a basis video that I just watched, talking about a TI, which stands for Targeted Individual, because of so many experiences this young man had about what is known as demonic possession. And it didn't take me long being here in Medford, Oregon, where I got hit. I had a demonic attack about 40 minutes ago, okay? It's the kinds of things or the kinds of thoughts you get hit with that I'm not going to repeat on this phone, okay? And it shouldn't surprise anybody why that is, which is why I came here. Which is why I noticed the first day I got here yesterday, the sky was clear. Now all of a sudden there's chemtrails. That shouldn't surprise me either, okay? And the reason for that is if you know the history of what happened here in Southern Oregon, particularly in Medford, because when I came in on a bus after I got off a train, I could see along the highway all the burned out homes. Oh man, I couldn't believe how many homes were lost around here, okay? And then on the other side of the mountain from where I'm at, is where Happy Camp is, which is big black bear country. And when you head south of the Klamath River, which is Highway 96 in California, between Interstate 5, where it empties out into the Pacific Ocean, everything south of that is all heavy-duty black bear country. It's got one of the largest populations of black bears. So I'm white bear, okay? So I came up to bring some healing energies into that bear country, okay? So no sooner did I get here, you can imagine then when there's been that much pain, that much suffering, that much loss of energy to all those breathers, all those trees, all those bears, everything that's in nature, and everything that the human beings that are around in here have suffered from, that means that the energy went way down, didn't it? And what do you think demons are looking for? Host vessels. Beings whose vibration has gotten down so low, particularly in the homeless community, where they move right in, and now you have demonic possession. That's why they do what they do. They want to increase the level of demons and demonic possession in order to lower the light that they know that is here. Okay? Particularly over election. Okay? They knew the election was coming up, because Trump was the one who said we're going to clear the swamp, which is reptilians. So that was notice to the reptilians. It's over. So that means that they got to crank it up in order to lower the vibration in beings who don't understand how this war is fought. And when they get down from being lower into lower fear-based and lower than fear, when they get down into the lower hertz range, okay, they are prime targets. Demon will move right into that energy field. Okay? And you can see them around here. Okay? Their eyes will go back and forth when you look at them. Hey, how you doing? You can see they're gone. Whatever soul used to be in that being, it's gone. So anyway, that's why we came in here. Okay? So when I walked around the corner, actually when I came back on the bus, I looked around because I could see there was another Indian. And I said, hey, you're Indian, huh? And he shook his head, and I said, I'm white bear. So I put my hand over my heart because another Indian knows what that means. Okay, we're heart-based, which is love-based. That's like sign language. They know that language. Okay? Bears are heart-based, love-based. Okay, so we knew. So I mentioned him some things that had happened, and he felt really good when I got off the bus. He gave me a fist bump to thank me for coming because I told him why I was here. And that's what's beautiful, to run into my other brothers and sisters who are native spirit to this planet. to this realm, that we're going to restore the light. These are beautiful experiences to have with other beings, okay? Because you can tell he was in a state of peace. I could read it. I could read his energy field. And it was beautiful to experience when you experience another being who's in a state of peace. You know? And that's important. It's why I've said many times, this above all times, okay, is the most important time to try and keep your energy up, okay? Particularly with children, because children are the easiest target, and they're targets for a very simple reason: the purity of their energy, okay, the purity of their innocence. I remember Max Spears said one time that aside the fact that they love their lower density, okay, and self-indulgence and perversion of nature, it's like any psychopath, okay, that wants to control everything. And those that are the easiest to control are those that live in fear. So they actually get their kicks on terrorizing children, okay, and doing the things that they do to our children, okay. And they do them specifically to children, especially because they realize, particularly to a mother, the purity of the innocence and the harm that has come to them, what that will do to a mother's heart. Okay? So that means that the target was the human heart. Turn it cold. So when the human heart turns cold, what happens? What's a reptile? Cold-blooded. They're cold-blooded killers. They're cold-blooded universe killers. They have no love for anything. So what do you think they're going to do? They look for host vessels to jump into when they get people down into a state of fear. Now they're down to their vibration, because that's what they are. They live in fear of what love is, because they know how powerful that energy is. So the only way that they can maintain an alignment, what's known as a bandwidth alignment, bandwidth channel alignment of perception, is to get everybody in a state of fear. And that's what they do. So one of the things that I noticed, because I read a newspaper this afternoon, and this is not a coincidence either, and this was one of the Southern Oregon's newspaper that talked about early voting, okay? Because one of the differences that you'll note if you go back and do an historical political analysis over the state of Oregon was traditionally Republican. Because if you go back and look at the economy in Oregon, you'll find out that most people that worked and lived in Oregon was timber-based, logs, production of timber. And I came up here into Southern Oregon at a time when most people around here either worked in a sawmill or worked in some derivative of the logging industry. They either worked for the Bureau of Land Management, U.S. Forest Service, or they worked in some category where it was related to the production of timber or agriculture. That means people that have a connection to the land, a spiritual connection to the living land that is providing for them. Okay? So if you would have gone back to the 60s or the 50s or the 40s in Oregon, particularly around here, you would have seen how people lived in the more natural way in which living in nature, in which living off the land with harmony in nature, is thus presented itself in the way that you can experience those that are part of nature and live in harmony with it, with the natural cycles. Then you will notice that by the time the mid-1970s came along, you began to see, just as a lady who's been here for 50 years noticed, they turned Jacksonville from what like a rustic old natural town, part of the woodsy part, into another Disneyland. Everything's got to be plastic. Okay? All based on money. All based on throwing what the money can do. See? So then it changes the perception of a natural connection to the living land to now a perception through money, what money does. Okay, then you saw the wineries go up. Alcohol. What does that produce? More demons in this area that are parasites. That's why the color in the state on the political side went from red to blue. Particularly when you look at the evolution, if you want to look at the evolution through the examining the historical data, go back and look at Portland, go back and look at Salem, go back and look at Eugene, and go look to see how most of the people were living in Oregon. So we should not have been surprised what happened up in Portland. You could predict it. You can see the evolution on a timeline when you got a looking glass, when you begin to realize in what's known as the exponential function in parasitic consciousness being produced in greater numbers. That's why the numbers changed in this state, which is the difference in the trophic levels between energy producers and energy consumers. And it is the government that is supposed to provide the energy for us so we don't have to provide as much energy for ourselves, and we use that energy in love and service to others. So they increase the amount of parasites. And that's what they do. They breed parasites. Those are your hybrids. Breeding more hybrids. Breeding more parasites. Breeding more human blood along with Anunnaki and Draco, which means these are lower vibrational units of consciousness, okay, in which they perceive things through a lower vibration. So when you're in a higher state of vibration, it means they're going to be feeding on our light. That's going to distort the energy field, isn't it? Yep. So that's what they do. Distort the energy field through their behavior. Because the perception through which they perceive themselves means they perceive they're going to run out of energy if they don't keep acquiring more of it. And the more energy that they believe that they have to acquire more of in order to perpetuate what they believe that they are, which is themselves, that they're aware of, is through more money. And where do they get it? Pillaging and plundering the land. Pillaging and plundering energy off of us. So we become a source of energy for them, so they feed on our light because they can't generate any love of their own to be an energy producer. A lighthouse. That's how it works. What side of the equation? So that's why this election is important in that sense. Because they were talking about how the Democrats had what was it put up? Something like 49 some odd percent. No, wait, it was 64 some odd percent of the Democrats were coming out to vote in Oregon, or Southern Oregon, compared to 49%, I think it was. You'd have to look it up, but the numbers were like somewhere in the neighborhood of about a 20% difference between red and blue. Now, look at the polls. Red light, blue light. What do you get when you get red and blue together? They're in harmony. Indigo. Da-da-da-da. High frequency. Bipolar. We're not 2D. We're beyond 2-pole. Snake eyes. Hey, I'm bipolar. 2 poles, huh? Snake eyes, 2D. You can have fun with this stuff. Enjoy the day. Now you begin to realize why things happen the way that they do. Take a look at Basis 54. Interesting conversation with that TI. He talked about, and I have an enormous amount of respect and honor for this young man who was willing to come out in the open and say that he was demonically possessed when he went into a house one time, and how he was able to come out of that. It takes an enormous amount of courage to do that, even though courage, when you measure that on the electromagnetic spectrum, is somewhere down about, what is it, if I remember correctly, 400 megahertz? 300, somewhere around there? I forget. Take a look at the chart. But nevertheless, this is the nature of the war. You know, low frequency, high frequency, low frequency, high frequency. You know, disharmony. You know, which is nothing more than the harmonics. You know, there isn't harmony because it's not harmonizing, peace, peace. Remember? Have a great night. Enjoy the evening.